Good afternoon, everyone. This is the April 27th, 2023 executive session of the Clarksville City Council. Before we jump into the Planning Commission report, I think we want to take a photograph, Madam Clerk, of the council wearing our red, white, and blue or beads. Mr. Settle, if you don't mind, come forward. And I think we're going to stand because one of us is blinged out over here. And that'll be obvious when she stands. So everybody please stand. There's no film in that camera, by the way. All right, first item on our agenda is the Regional Planning Commission. Mr. Tyndall, we are ready for item 1, Ordinance 107-2023, or Zoning Planning Commission Case Z-22-2023.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. We have several cases to go through tonight. The Mayor mentioned the first case, Z-22-2023, application of Rita Home Builders. This is 0.72 acres, currently zoned C2 and requesting to go to C5. It is an extension of the C5. This is at the corner, southwest corner of Needmore Road and Trenton Road in City Council Ward number 9. You can see the C5 there in the darker blue and the C2 to the north in the lighter blue. It's a corner lot overgrown with vegetation. The applicant's statement of proposed use is for future building. Comments from other departments. The biggest issue is going to be about access to the site. The street department preliminarily has said no access to Trenton Road and right in, right out only off of Needmore Road unless an access appeal is granted. They would encourage the developer to have a conversation with the adjacent owner to the south for access to Trenton Road through that gas station. No other comments or concerns involving this site. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The property is a corner lot at a signalized intersection along an arterial highway, and C5 is the highway and arterial commercial zoning classification. The request is an extension of the C5, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes. I just had a question or clarification for everyone. When you say that it'll be decided when they put in their site plan, that's when they'll have to ask for the appeal, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item 2, Ordinance 108-2022-23. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z-23-2023, application of Robert Mayville and Amanda Whitehurst. This is 0.54 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R6. It is not an extension of the R6, but there is R6 in the general vicinity. The parcel fronts High Street, approximately 525 feet south of the Crossland Avenue intersection, City Council Ward number 6. It's a parcel with moderate to steep slope, overgrown with vegetation, and the applicant's statement is for single-family infill development. And you can see here's High Street, property's on the left. There's the property in question right there. No current structure on it. And property to the left, and then property to the right. Department comments, none were received. Sidewalk would be required per the R6 classification. Historical estimates would be only 2 units. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R6 is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, including other residential supportive uses such as mass transit and retail in the area. The adopted land use plan indicates it's encouraged to maintain a desirable mix of housing types. Sidewalks are required as part of the R6. No adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding Ordinance 108? Seeing none, we're ready for item 3, Ordinance 109. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z-24-2023, application of Robert Meadows and Stephen Tyler Dennis. 0.79 acres across 3 parcels, currently zoned R1 and requesting to go to R6. These parcels front Everett Drive south of Hemlock Drive. This is in City Council Ward number 7. These are parcels at a corner intersection with moderate to steep slope and overgrown with vegetation. The applicant's statement is to extend the current zoning and provide a single-family infill development. It is an extension of the R6, if I hadn't said that. There's from Hemlock looking down to Everett. The properties are in front of you on the left. There's a little further out in the intersection. And looking back Hemlock to Greenwood, properties are on your right. And a little further back Everett, looking at the 3 properties. Comments from other departments. Gas and Water said a gravity sewer extension may be possible. Sidewalks will be required on both Kleeman Drive and Everett Drive. Must follow access ordinance. Driveways must be 50 feet or more from the intersection. Accommodating existing drainage will affect the lot layout. Another comment from the street department. And you can see the school system comments on their capacities listed. Historical estimates would put this as high as 9 units, but there are topography issues in that area there. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R6 single family is an extension of the R6. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, including other residential supportive uses. Existing drainage features on site will need to be accommodated during the site design process. Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, thank you for the explanation. Is you sure that's in Ward 7?
I believe just
That's
south
Ward
of
6, I
Daniel
think.
Street goes to Ward 7 right there. It's kind of right on the border.
It is.
I'll be happy to clarify that, but I believe
I
so.
thought it was in my ward. I did campaign over there.
It used to be in your ward. I do know that
Okay,
last time. So
okay,
maybe I'll look.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item 4, ordinance 110. Mr. Tyndall.
This is application Z25 2023, application of James Burchett. 1.02 acres, currently zoned C4 and requesting to go to C2. It's an extension of the C2 and it's a parcel that fronts the west frontage of New South Drive off of Highway 76. This is in City Council Ward number 10. It's a vacant level and maintained lot, and the applicant's statement is to provide for a professional office building. Here's New South Drive. It's really just a mix of offices and townhouses and apartment complexes back there. There's looking from the apartments back to 76, the property there with the sign on the left. You can see the other office buildings in the area. And that's across the street, a new apartment complex that was built. No comments or concerns from the other departments. You can see the school system comments listed. If this did go multifamily, it would be historically around 12 units with a max of 16. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The area of request is on the fringe of the established C4 Highway Interchange District with limited visibility from Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. The C2 district provides additional uses such as professional offices to serve the needs of the residents in the area. And the C2 district also has the opportunity for mixed-use residential, which is encouraged in the adopted plan. Adequate infrastructure serves the site. No adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, we're ready for item 5, ordinance 111. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z26, 2023, application of Regional Holdings, Richard Garrett agent. This is 0.51 acres, currently zoned R3, requesting to go to R4. It is an extension. You actually had a recent rezoning adjacent to this parcel a month or two ago. The parcel fronts Oak Street, 240 feet south of B Street, City Council Ward number 6. It's a lot that is overgrown with vegetation, and the applicant's statement is a longer one. We currently own and manage 3 quadplexes nearby the subject property located at 506 B Street, 191 Oak Street, and 185 Oak Street. We also own the recently R4 rezoned parcel on B Street, where we plan to build 6 units and are seeking to build 7 additional units and improve the traffic flow and parking services in the area. And here you're approaching the property. Overgrown, there's several smaller multifamily projects between 4 and 6 units just to the left there. Here's some examples. That's what's to the left. And then to the right, a lot of vacant parcels. And looking back up Oak Street. No comments or concerns from other departments. And you can see the school system with their comments listed about school capacities. Historical estimates would put it at 6 units. The applicant indicates they think they can get 7 units. That still falls within their allowed by zoning. Staff would recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern and is an extension of the established R4 district. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, we're ready for item 6, ordinance 112. Please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z27, 2023, application of Raphael Porter. This is 0.38 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R2A. It is not an extension of the R2A. The parcels are at the northeast corner of 4th and 9th Street intersection in City Council Ward number 6. These are 2 lots at a street intersection that have been cleared recently for development purposes. The applicant's statement to rezone to comply with the past and recently proposed Red River neighborhood plan of affordable single-family lots. This rezone of these existing undeveloped lots can provide 3 lots with 40-foot width and sidewalk at the street. And you can see where there's R3 and a little R6, R4 is across the street right there at the intersection. You can see the property recently cleared there down on the right. That's from Ford Street. Looking back a little further. And there's the site in question. No other comments or concerns from other departments. Sidewalk will be required per the R2A redevelopment area, and you can see the school system comments of their capacities listed. Historical estimates for R2A would put this at 3 units, which the applicant states. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R2A single-family residential zoning district is not out of character with the surrounding development and is consistent with the recently adopted Red River neighborhood plan. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. Staff recommends approval. Planning Commission recommends approval. And I just want to say this gentleman took the time to understand the plan, ask his questions, and come up with a zone that's appropriate with the adopted plan.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Tyndall, I was just wondering, I know when I read the plan, there was a discussion about creating, something between R6 and R2A, another zone. If that was implemented with, just for my own reference, would he have been able to get one more house, or would that have pretty much been it for that property? A swag.
I don't know. I haven't looked that far into it.
Are we planning on doing that?
Yes, you'll plan on seeing something the next month or two as we look at R3 and this neighborhood.
Okay.
So there is an opportunity for some additional, slightly smaller lots, but somewhere between the 30 and 40 foot range.
Right.
This would be 40 feet as R2A.
So I do appreciate that the applicant took the time to be in line with the plan. Thank you for that.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Mr. Raphael did call me. Mr. Porter called me to let me know that, see, this is in my area, you all. So I would be voting in favor of this because he did tell me that he was going to be building homes, single-family homes. And if you ever go over there on that street, if you look at one of the homes that he built, it is beautiful right on that street. He did an awesome job, and I thank him for that. Thank you.
Any more comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, we're now ready for Resolution 56, Item 7. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Without objection, Mayor, I'd like to take Resolution 56 and 57 together. It's the
Okay.
annexation and the plan of service.
Got it.
Okay, so we have an annexation request this month. This one's just a little larger than the 2 acres last month. Let me get my details up here. Okay. This is 208.5 acres. Of that, I believe it says in the resolution, 131 of it is land and 77 acres is right of way. The land in question are those 3 parcels, or 3 areas, I should say, in blue. The current one on the corner of Guthrie Highway and Oakland Road to the right is owned by Mr. Bateman, and that is currently zoned C4 in the county. It splits between the city and the county to the south. That's where Cracker Barrel Drive ends. And then you go a little bit to the left, and there's a little parcel there jointly owned by Mr. Bateman and Mr. Plummer. Currently has a little, I believe, small engine shop or something on Oakland Road there. And then the larger property, the heirs of the George Kennedy III, are the larger property that's both hatched in light and darker blue. The zone change request here is to take that larger portion and rezone the southern half, which is hatched in the darker blue, C4, to match the C4 around the Cracker Barrel Drive area, and C2 to the north. In addition, when we have larger annexations like this, it's an opportunity to bring in certain right-of-way to serve it and clean up certain city limits. If you didn't know, the interstate out there for that mile was not actually annexed into the city back in the day for some reason. So this is an opportunity to clean up the city limits. They already respond out there. The fire and rescue does, and then so does the police department. So appropriate to put that in the city limits. And then Oakland Road, we were looking at taking Oakland Road just through the entry of this property, but it left just about 2,000 feet of Oakland Road out in the middle of the county, and the decision was to bring Oakland Road all into the city limits, since it does serve the majority city residents coming up and down from the Oakland and Tylertown area. The applicant's estimate on this, we do ask for estimates on larger projects of what they want to do with it, especially since there's a rezoning. It's currently zoned C4 and Ag. They indicated approximately 600 housing units, multifamily in the C2 area, which you can see would represent approximately 1,350 new residents. This site is being shopped as a potential VA hospital site, or if not, it'd be converted to commercial and other office and retail uses. So that's why the kind of the flexibility there between the 300,000 square feet of medical or these other uses, those all represent approximately 465 jobs in the area. On the plan of service, the plan of service is typical of most departments. I do want to call out the 2 items there. Parks Department did call out that Ward 12 currently has no city managed parkland, and obviously this additional 1,300 residents would add to that need, and that CDE would have to expend approximately $771,000 extending a line from their substation on Alfred Toon Road and fiber services out to serve this property. That money gets recuperated when you have tap fees and you have end users start to tap into it. The Planning Commission and Planning Commission staff does not object to this rezoning at this time, and I'm happy to take any questions on this.
And we've got some. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, just knowing that this was just up for county rezoning before it was pulled from that just a month or 2 ago, did we put up new signs, seeing as there is a rezoning that's tied in with this annexation?
I've not personally driven past that, but we did pay to put a sign out on Oakland Road in front of the area that was going to get rezoned on this property. That's going to be our new policy for annexations that ask for rezoning in the future, is to at least put the sign out on the property as if it was a rezoning.
Okay, because I know that Mr. Spain, and I hope the residents realize, it came down and went back up, because I know Mr. Spain Howard had gotten some calls in regard to the C2 zoning when it was being requested on the county side rather than an annexation. And of course, at that point, as C2 in the county can't be used as residential, whereas C2 for the city can, and that was their I know they stated it in the Regional Planning Commission meeting all along that the area that was C2 was intended to be residential. I forgot my second question. I apologize. I'll let
We'll get
somebody
back
else
to you.
go and I'll come back.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you for taking my calls and having patience when I email you with multiple questions. And I appreciate that you share information so freely. Thank you for that. I have a concern. I have several concerns about not necessarily the annexation, but the zoning inside of this annexation. That is my concern. So we talk. They estimate 600 units, but actually, there's approximately 72 acres on this property that is C2, which means actually they can build 1,152 apartment units. And if you assume an average of 2.25 people per apartment, that's an average of 2,592 residents. This is a huge project, a lot of property, and I just don't feel that these two zonings represent the potential of what we could do. So when we spoke, one of the estimates that you gave me for that really, I knew it was big, but I just didn't get it. The C4 piece of property that we're discussing right now without a plan to put into C4 actually equals the amount of property from Walmart to Chick-fil-A on Wilma Rudolph, correct? About that.
On one side of the
On the
street.
one side of the road. That's a lot of property to just put on a blank sheet of paper and say, let's do this. Also, I think 1,152 apartment units in one space in one community without a plan or a design. I mean, this just really, this amount of property we could have, we're right by the industrial park. We could have step down units, like we could have apartments and small homes, townhomes, like so a whole community can live there and go to work and not just one step above the barracks and everybody drive up on a piece of cement to their front door and let's cram as many apartments into this area. I really, again, I don't have a concern with the with this coming into the community. But the actual zoning and no plan. And just as a reminder, in the previous times when we rezoned outside of this type of annexation, we required different things, like we required access to Cracker Barrel Drive. We could require different things, but because they've put it inside of the annexation, there's no requirements for that. So once again, then we've got to come back and lawyer up as we make the plan for the property. We're approving C2 in this annexation and giving them a blank sheet and writing a huge check to from our taxpayer dollars if we don't have some more control. I would honestly like to see a better plan, or for this to come into the community as ag and then present a plan of how they're going to do it. I did see a plan of annexation, but this is like what they're saying today, right? This plan of annexation, there's nothing holding them to what they say in here. Is that correct, Mr. Tyndall?
Once it's zoned, they can build what that zone allows them to.
Whatever. And again, I just want to remind, I'm not opposed to the annexation. I'm opposed to the blank check and how much it's going to cost our taxpayer dollars if we don't do this right. And I just see this property with so much potential, and I feel like we already missed it. If we drive across, if we go to Tenova and we see the property across from Tenova, we have a park at one end and a winery at the other. That would have been a great planned community, would have been a very high end, and instead it's like a postage stamp of whatever the builder felt like doing on their piece of property. And I'd like to see us if with my magic wand is to actually have a better plan for this property so that doesn't continue to happen in our community. And I know that we don't have the zoning right now for that, but just doing this blank here, I have concerns.
Is that all?
Yeah, for now.
Stay tuned. Councilperson Shekina, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Tender, for that presentation. Can you touch on the road improvement situation? I understand we have 77 acres of right-of-way, in particular where Oakland turns into Merriweather, and then Oakland goes where the school is at, that three-way there. That's a major choke point already for a lot of the residents. So can you touch on that?
Sure. As part of the annexation, any requirements that would be put on the annexation would actually be the responsibility of the city. We would handle, with the street department's advice, when these parcels come in for development, depending the scale and types of development, look at the bigger picture with a traffic study, what that would do, and there may be off-site improvements necessary depending on what they decide to do with the property. But at this point, just because we're annexing or rezoning, I can't say what those improvements would be yet. And it may be at certain timing as well.
Thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, how many estimated accesses do you think they would be approved to access Oakland Road?
I would really want to defer to the street department. I believe they have a certain formula that as a collector road, they could only have one every so many 100 feet. But if you wanted that exact number, I'd have to ask them to crunch that number for you.
Okay, and then I was wondering if they would also be able to access Guthrie at that bottommost corner.
We do have a subdivision plan for Cracker Barrel Drive to extend and go back, loops back to Guthrie, and then a private road goes to Oakland. I'm hoping that with this plan as well as that plan, we can look back at that and provide some more secondary connectivity through this area. We would encourage the landowners to do that. Again, we operate sometimes under what is in front of us, and then the big picture sometimes gets revealed after the fact. And this
Right.
is the big picture that if this came in all at once, of course, we'd have connections and roadways and secondary frontage roads out there or something to take the pressure off Oakland Road. But at the time, we were looking at just a Cracker Barrel Drive because that's what was in front of us. We sometimes just have to hit the pitch that was thrown to us. As far as access, I will tell you that currently the dark blue property, because of its proximity to Guthrie, was only given one or maybe two total accesses for that length. As far as the remaining length of Oakland, if you wanted to, I'd have to call the street department up to answer that.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question, hopefully is for you, and then I also have a question for Chief Crockrell. But I didn't see in the report any reports from the school system as to how that could impact the surrounding schools if it does, that C2 does end up going multifamily, what the worst case scenario is. Is that something that information we can get before next week?
I can ask them their input on that, like we would a zoning case. Because they're a unified school district, if it was a separate city or county school district, we would have to get their comments for the plan of service. But as a unified school district, just like with bi-county solid waste, for instance, it doesn't change whether you're in the city or the county. Your same services are being provided. The school system would accommodate the growth here just as if it grew in the county or the city. However, to your point, this does give you more development potential being in the city.
Right.
So.
If it was already in the city and we were rezoning it to C2 from ag or C5, we would have
You would get
an
their
idea
comments.
of what
I can
that
ask them
data would
to
be.
provide something to you by next week.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll defer any other questions and so people can ask Mr. Tyndall, but I would like to ask the street department the questions that Mr. Tyndall couldn't answer, and then also have a question for Chief Crocker.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and continue that if you don't mind.
Sure.
Mr. Cowan and Chief Crockrell, if you don't mind, come on up and,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. That's why we have the executive session. Chief, you're first in the barrel. Councilperson McLaughlin.
Thank you. Chief, so even though the report says that with the existing hiring plan, you all anticipate that you could cover that area, but what if it does end up that C2 ends up being as many people as Councilmember Reynolds mentioned? I would imagine that would, if it's new people to our community, that could throw us over the 2 officers per 1,000.
Yeah, so the traditional response that we've given Mr. Tyndall and his team for years has been with annexation and growth is that we're not opposed to it. We just deal with it with our ratio, our hiring ratio. When population increases, that's how we respond. You know, an officer ratio hiring to deal with the citizens, the population census numbers. Well, this is the first time I just didn't feel comfortable responding with that traditional. If I recall, this is the request where I just couldn't send that same response. And what I mean by that is no different than what comes up with you all around school system and you annex an area or you rezone an area for neighborhoods and the impact that it has on the schools. That's kind of where my mind is now with the growth of this city and our challenges of hiring. So my response, I just had to change it. I couldn't, from my heart, say, hey, we'll deal with it with our hiring ratio per thousand in the city. Well, that's difficult to do, and the growth is obviously outpacing us. And Mr. Red and before that, Mr. Holloman has traditionally responded in their public safety report on our vacancies, and we've been steady. We're doing better with your help, but still 37 vacancies is a concern, and I look at it a little worse. And with those that are deployed, FMLA or light duty, those in training, different levels of the training, pre-academy, in the academy, post-academy, and those that are in the field training officer portion, we've seen as many as 60 officers not on the road in the past year and a half. So, and that's out of an allocation of 343. So that's concerning. So with this latest request for input, I just felt I needed to change the way I respond, and that's going to be my response until we are able to catch up. Hopefully, and we're doing everything we can to do that. We're going to 2 different academies, and we recruit like never before. But it is a concern. It is just a consequence of such a great city. Everybody wants to come here, but and in terrible timing, the incidents that happen in law enforcement across the nation have an impact on us, and our application pool was dropped, and we understand why. We're still finding good candidates, but where it used to take 2 days to test to fill those vacancies, it takes 2 hours. That's just but that also happens for a lot of organizations. It's not just us, it's all across Tennessee and law enforcement. But so I changed the way I had to respond to that. I just didn't feel comfortable with that traditional answer, if that answers your question.
It does, and you've trained us well to know that undeveloped property at interstate exit isn't as time-consuming to law enforcement as developed property with residents at interstate exit, which you've taught us about the trends of people jumping off the interstate to commit crimes in our community and then leaving. And that seems like it'll be another hotbed for that potential. Just, I'm not an expert, but just in my opinion.
Well, the show will go on, and however you vote, we will deal with it, and we deal with it better than any. Crime still violent crime specifically has still been going down based on our efforts. So, this is something you all need to decide to do, and we'll take care of it. We'll take care of business, but it is a concern, and it's going to take years for us to catch up based on the growth. So we're hovering right around 2.0, 1.98, per thousand. Our goal is to get to 2.2 per thousand, but in this region of the Southeast, the average is 2.7 officers per thousand. Chattanooga is around 3.4. It's not anything we're not doing as a team. It's just a season we're in, and we're weathering it pretty good, in my opinion.
You are. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief. Chris, I think Councilperson McLaughlin had a question for the street department.
I know it seems like 20 minutes ago that I asked that, but I was just curious if you have estimates how many accesses that this total annexation could potentially have to Oakland Road.
And we were just looking at that distance between there. I think we're looking at probably 5 or 6 access points. We would be restricting them based on the classification of that roadway as a collector road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. When we get to you on the list, We'll bring them back. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify some statements that were made earlier, this rezoning being part of the annexation, it's still rezoning just like any other time we do a rezoning. So if this was already part of the city and then they brought forward the request for the rezoning, it wouldn't be any different, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by different.
I guess it was stated, that this was kind of like a blanket rezoning, bringing it in with it being such a large piece of property, but it would be a large piece of property regardless of whether or not it was part of the annexation, correct?
So I would say as a city council member, your job is to evaluate the plan of service in whole, and this is one part of that plan of service is the zone change request.
Correct.
When property is brought into the city, it is afforded a one-time opportunity to quote, get the zoning right. There's communities in the count in the state that where the county has no zoning and the city does, so you have to zone it when you bring it in, or maybe the city and county zoning is so drastically different you can't just leave it like it is. We have about half our annexations come in with a zone request, and this one's no different. So you have to evaluate that as well as all the other pluses and minuses that go along with it.
No, I understand. But we also can't put any conditions on the
No.
zoning. That comes at the site plan stage.
Correct.
Okay, I knew that had been stated. I just wanted that clarified that we can't do conditional zoning when we're making the zone changes to what has to be done within there. And especially we can't tell them what to build in there without us buying it ourselves.
As I mentioned before, and the attorney can correct me if I'm incorrect here, but you've got to hit the pitch that was thrown to you, and you got to vote this up or down based on what's in front of you. You can't amend it. You can't add to it. It is an annexation request at the request of a landowner.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized.
Let me make sure I get this right. So we're voting on the resolution for annexation. If that passes, whatever is built there later on would have to come in front of us as an ordinance for the rezoning, or does this annexation take the rezoning with it?
Correct. It is, I hate to use the word loophole, alternative, let's use that term. When you annex, because it is by resolution now by the state, they say you have to do it by resolution, you can annex it. It takes about 1 month less, obviously, than coming in and then going through the rezoning typical ordinance process. If you pass this as it is here, you will not see this for a rezoning again unless they want to move the lines or change the zones.
Okay,
It will be site plans and subdivisions with the planning commission from here on out.
yes. And you said that we already provide services to this area currently.
Interstate 24. So crashes, fires that happen on Interstate 24, even though it's technically not in the city limits, this 5,000 linear feet there that you see between exit 4 and the Merriweather Bridge, the city fire and rescue and police still do respond out there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilperson Reynolds?
Yes, I did want to kind of travel back and make a couple more points that, just as a reminder, when we vote to say that 72 acres of this property will go to C2. We won't see anything again. And one of the questions, and I'm going to ask for Mr. Cowan after this, I do have a question. So that is what if you look at the large piece of property on Tiny Town at exit 1 that keeps coming back, piecemealing, which means if we were going to look at it overall, we might have asked for a connector road to be built through the community. But because we're looking at it by piecemeal, we're missing those opportunities. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, we may do this big piece and then they'll sell off pieces of the property, and whoever they sell it to can do whatever they want. And we don't have an overall, we really do need a connector road. The chief has always indicated that we're missing some of the side roads along our major thoroughfares. We don't have, I don't know the word of it. Access road, thank you. We don't have access roads. And so when we zone this and then they start piecing it back together instead of all one piece, we're gonna miss all these opportunities. So I just have this is a lot of property and a big opportunity, and I just see us coming back and postage stamping as we develop it. And this appears to be, they're rezoning it for the highest level of use, and then they'll come back in, and I wish they would do it the other way. I'd also like to mention that right now this is in Ward 12 and we do not have a city council person for Ward 12. And perhaps we consider postponing this at least 1 month until they have a representation. We have done that in the past out of respect for the community. And then the second thing is property for a park. I have a concern, and again, this is a perfect opportunity, especially at one end, for the city to purchase or work on getting that property for a park. Do you know, is that a Parks and Rec question? Is that the Planning Commission as we move forward?
That involves a couple folks. Parks and Rec and Planning Commission could be involved.
Okay, all right. And then I do have a question about, you know, the connectivity through the property with the streets department.
Mr. Cowan, your name wasn't called, but your department was. Councilperson Reynolds,
Thank
you have a question.
How are you?
Good.
So again, back to the access road and the connectivity back over to Crackerbow Drive through the middle of this property instead of everything going to Oakland and in. If they piecemeal it, we're gonna miss that opportunity, correct? Like if they sell off pieces here and there, we won't have that opportunity to have that conversation. I feel like we miss that in our community often.
Well, I think a couple things, you know, we were doing some improvements in this area. Towtown and Oakland Road is a current city capital project that we're working on. And one of the phases of that project is widening Oakland Road as it comes down to a 3-lane section with sidewalk on both sides. It makes a lot of sense to continue that same type of section down all the way to Guthrie Highway. I think that's something we'd likely would be looking for, particularly with all the development potential along this route. Of course, we'll evaluate that as they come in. Like you say, we'll have them evaluate their traffic impacts, but we will keep a cumulative look at that as they come in so that we're not just looking at one small piece. We're going to have to keep an eye out for the larger as all of it comes through as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The developer will be invited to participate. We'll
Yes.
just put it that way. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So I believe I know the answer to this question, but we are taking these two resolutions up. We're talking about them at the same time, but it is two resolutions. The first one is the annexation. The second one, the plan of service, which actually includes the rezoning. In theory, if we shared some of the similar concerns that my colleague from Ward 9 mentioned, we could approve the annexation, but disapprove the plan of service resolution. This also might be a time for Mr. Baker to weigh in.
I will have to research that to make sure, but my recollection of the law is at the time of approving an annexation, you also are required to approve a plan of service. That's what I think the law is. But it's been a while since I've looked at it. Does that sound right to you?
Sounds right, but
I need to.
Well, the goal line keeps changing with the state legislature on annexation, so
It's-
we'll need to get clarification on that.
There's been almost every year they have revisited annexation and tweaked the law. So I need to double check that, but I believe that is what the law is as I sit here right now.
That,
Councilperson Zacharias.
thank you, Mayor. That's all.
Okay. Anything else on item 7 or 8? Seeing none, we're ready for item 9, ordinance 106. Mr. Tyndall.
City Council for the previous annexation and this one, if this does take place this month, this ordinance is to reapportion these pieces of property into their proper wards for future representation and voting purposes. We didn't do one last month with that little 2 acres because it was all commercial and I knew this one was on its way. So we just held off doing the reapportionment ordinance. I've highlighted on this map both areas, Ward 7 and Ward 12. And on your ordinance, you can see the blow up maps of both this as well as the wards. But this is just a formality after annexation to actually add it to the voting wards for the next election. If it gets deferred, obviously we defer this as well.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none?
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. We're ready for the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 89, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Clarksville authorizing the mayor or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement for purchase and acquisition of easements and/or property rights for a public purpose for the sidewalk project on Ringgold Road. Ordinance 90, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Clarksville authorizing the mayor or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement for purchase and acquisition of easements and/or property rights for a public purpose for the sidewalk project on Crossland Avenue. Ordinance 91, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Clarksville authorizing the mayor or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement for purchase and acquisition of easements and/or property rights for a public purpose for the sidewalk project on Burns Darden and between Richview Middle School and Clarksville High School. Ordinance 92, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Clarksville authorizing the mayor or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement for purchase and acquisition of easements and/or property rights for a public purpose for the sidewalk project on Rodeer Drive, North Liberty Church, Appleton Drive, and Old Russellville Pike. Ordinance 93, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 1 of the Official City Code to amend subparagraphs 3 and 4 under Section 2-105. Ordinance 94, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance to amend City Code pertaining to the Recreation Special Revenue Fund. Ordinance 95, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance amending the Official Code, Title 1.5, Chapter 16, Section 1.5-1602, relative to the organization and terms of the Human Relations Commission. Ordinance 97, 2022-23, second reading. An ordinance adopting the Red River Neighborhood Plan. Ordinance 98, 2022-23, second reading. Amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Luke Baggett, Sid Hedrick agent, for zone change on property located at the intersection of Davis Drive and Willow Heights from R2 Single Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 99, 2022-23, second reading. Amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Wyatt Chittenden for zone change on property located at the intersection of Reynolds Street and Dodd Street from R3, 3-family residential district, to R6, single-family residential district. Ordinance 100, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Dunbar Development for zone change on property located at the intersection of Needmore Road and Centerstone Circle from AG Agricultural District to R6, single-family residential district. Ordinance 101, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Paul Mugado Pedroza for zone change on property located at the intersection of Evans Road and Garrettsburg Road from RM1, single-family residential district, to R1A, single-family residential district. Resolution 57, 2022-23, a resolution approving a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at Ebenezer's Liquor and Wine located at 2896 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Resolution 58, 2022-23, a resolution approving a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at 1049 Highway 76 and adoption of minutes from April 6th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anyone wish to ask a question about the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 72, 20, 22, 23. First reading, an ordinance amending Part 2 Code of Ordinances, Title 12, Streets and Other Public Ways and Places, Chapter 6, Cemeteries of the Official Code of the City of Clarksville. Both the Finance and Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committees all recommended approval. Many of us all serve with those being various committees on there. This is mainly just because this policy has not been updated very much since the 1960s. And it's also to bring our fees more in line with today's fees. Those haven't been updated since 2006. They are still lower than others in the area, but it does help us more with covering the rising costs since 2006.
Comment or question? Councilperson Reynolds, you have a question on this ordinance?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, thank you to the streets department and the cemetery. They really worked hard on updating the ordinance, and also I appreciate all the city employees who are working to be inclusive in their language. They changed out the old he, she, or he into there, and I see that trend, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 105, 20, 22, 23, an ordinance authorizing the purchase or condemnation of Frosty Mourn abandoned railroad spur for easements and or rights of way and or fee simple title in connection with the redevelopment of the city-owned former Frosty Mourn packing plant property. The Finance Committee recommended approval on this as well.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 55, 20, 22, 23, a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clarksville, Tennessee, and the Clarksville Arts and Heritage Council, AHC. The Finance Committee also recommended approval of this.
Any comment or question? Seeing none, hearing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We are ready for the Gas and Water Committee. Chairperson Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Neighborhood and Community Services, Chairperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a full report next week.
Thank you, sir. We're ready for Parks and Recreation Committee. Chairperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I will also have a full report next week.
Awesome. Thank you. We're ready for Public Safety Committee. Chairperson Red, you're recognized.
I'll have a report next week, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee. Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
I have a report on May 4th.
Thank you. Thank you. No new business, I see. Any member of council have a comment? Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind everybody, we still have a few weeks of school left in the school year, and often during this time, just like the kids are getting anxious for summer to get here, drivers seem to be getting a little bit more anxious to get through the school zones. So I would ask everybody to please recognize that you're still within those school zones. Please still keep it within the 20 miles per hour that's posted during that time, not only as you're driving towards the school, but also once you pass it. We've got a lot of kids and parents that are crossing across and walking along there, and we have our crossing guards out there. So ask that you just please continue to be patient just for a few weeks longer, and then summer will be out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Markey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a question for one of my colleagues, Ward 2. What happened to an ordinance that I was expecting? It was brought up to two committees and it kind of didn't make it. I was just wondering what happened.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're the sponsor. You're recognized.
After a meeting with Mr. Baker, he had asked that we defer it until the May Finance Committee meeting, just to check on the legalities based on what the state legal review was.
Okay.
It's not going away. It'll be
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorely needed. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Oh, okay. For comments.
Yes, for comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, thank you, and I appreciate the street department for all they do. Mr. Riggins has been an interim director there, and he's been showing up and showing out. He's done a good job, and I think we need to go ahead and hire him for that position. And
I object. We need him at Gas and Water, Mr. Riggins.
well, we got to do something with him. We can double pay him, Mayor. We just let him work there.
Now you're talking. Okay. You have a second.
I just want to thank you so much for all you do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering if we could get a brief overview of what to expect for the Ward 12 appointment and interview process next week, since I haven't been through this before. I was just curious as to, are we going to be emailed information and a list, and then kind of what the flow is?
Okay, I was going to cover that in
Oh,
my
sorry.
comments. So as
I
soon as-
apologize.
That's okay. As soon as we get to the end, I'll kind of review that and answer any questions. Councilperson Reynolds?
Yes, I was looking for to verify the date. We have, the CDE Light Band on May 11th from 3 to 7 p.m. They're having a ride and drive to test electric vehicles. I'll remind you again. I think that's really exciting. It's well organized and published on their website. Check it out. And if I get my bumper back on my car, I'll have my car there.
There's a story there, but I don't think we have time to cover it. All right, any other comment or question regarding the vacancy? People who wish to be considered must appear in person pursuant to City Code Section 1-210. They will appear in person. They will make themselves known to City Council. They're not required ahead of time to present material, resumes, or anything. Many have. Those materials we've received, you will receive those in your packet. There may be folks who show up that next Thursday night and will sign the list. We will go by the list, and everyone who wishes to be considered must be here, will present themselves to the council. We'll get to ask them questions. And then on May the 10th, Tuesday, May the 10th at 4:30, back in these council chambers, we'll have a special session, and the only item will be to vote, hopefully to elect a representative for Ward 12. Any comment or question from council regarding that process? Did I get it right, Mr. Baker? Okay, just like you wrote it. All right. Thank you, thank you. All right, any member of the public wish to address the council? Seeing none, you are recognized again.
I'm sorry. I know that some people have sent in resumes. Is it possible to see some of them ahead of time? If they've submitted them, can we get them as they come in the door, or do we have to wait?
We'll send those out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned until next Thursday. Thank you.